Hi YouTube, we are back. It has been quite the year. We've had a very busy year. It's been quite eventful. Now that the snow is finally here, however, we are taking a little bit of time just to take some time out and chat about some questions. Things have slowed down on the homestead a little bit, so we have time to do a little bit more in terms of some videos. So what we thought we would do, because we've had some questions, we've had lots of questions from people, some of the more common ones, and we've had some that are kind of out there in terms of what the content is. So what we thought we'd do is we'd start a little mini series of questions, more common questions that we've been asked or that other homesteaders might get asked as well, in order to just kind of educate people a little bit on what it takes to live this lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah, the questions are going to hit more of a general population, anybody looking to get into it. It won't be anything specific, but yeah, did you want to dive into the first one, or should I?
I can.
Okay,
I can
go
do the
for
first
it.
question. So our first question that we get asked, this is a very common one that we get asked a lot, is it harder to live off-grid than it is in the city? Now, Andre, I'm sure, has some opinions on this. What I will say is that it depends on what you mean, first of all, by off-grid. There's different levels of an off-grid lifestyle that you can live. You can live an off-grid lifestyle where you're, literally in the bush in a cabin in the woods, and you pull your water from a well or a stream or something like that. You don't necessarily have power. There's different levels of standards of living for what you'd like to have. So if you're living off-grid, the general definition of living off-grid is that you are not dependent on a grid system that is a city. There's any level of homesteading or living off-grid in that certain area.
Yeah, don't get confused off-grid by just having your own power supply. Off-grid means that you are your own grid system. Also, at the same time, is if you're living in the city, now yes, you do have all the conveniences of living in the city, but you then also have higher costs associated with that as well. Where out here, you don't have the cost associated with it as much, but everything is dependent on you. So my grocery store is a live chicken. I have to go out there and butcher a chicken in order to put it on the table and raise it from a baby as well, whereas people in the city have the convenience of just going to the grocery store and now paying a higher price point on getting that same chicken, which at the same time won't have, depending on where you're getting it, won't have the same nutritional value as something that you raise on your own and feed organic food.
Yeah, it's like you pay for the convenience, right? You can have that extra bit of money, and or you can choose to spend rather that extra bit of money and have the convenience of living in a city, or you can choose to do things a little bit more naturally.
Yeah, and I'd like to relate back to some of the locals that we've met up in this area too. The one couple that have, or actually two out of the couples that live up here, they've been up here for 40 and 50 years. And when you talk to them and they moved off-grid, they legitimately moved off-grid. They moved up here when there was no road, so they had to use dogs to get up, dogs and sled, and they lived in a tent, even in the winter when it was minus 50 from what they say, minus 60 at some points. So that, if you want to live that lifestyle, now like kudos to you, that is a very hard way of living off-grid, or you can get something more modern. It's a very broad question. It all depends on your comfort level and what you want to do and not do on the homestead or off-grid property.
Yeah, it comes down to standards of living, really, as to how difficult or how expensive it can be for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and maintaining that standard of living in the city, because all the costs are always going up. Here, my electricity doesn't go up. My gas, my heating bill doesn't go up. Yes, I have to pay a little bit more for fuel. However, it's not going to impact me as much as living in the city. So like there's a good saying that I like to fall back on, and it kind of relates to a lot of things in life. But living in the city is hard, and living off-grid is hard. So pick your hard. It's no matter where you're going to be in life, you're going to have obstacles and challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, yeah, choose your hard. Everything is difficult in its own way, and if you want a certain kind of hard, you might as well enjoy yourself with that certain level of difficulty. Nothing in life is going to necessarily come easy to you, and if it does come easy, did you work for it, and is that effort that you've put in yourself? So that's a consideration to take into. Or something, a factor to take into consideration. Out here as well, like it's important to remember it's a different type of work. Out here on a homestead, yes, I work online, but out here in terms of the actual homestead life, it's a physical work and it's consistent work. It's not like a 9 to 5 job or an 11 to 7 job where you go and clock in and you punch your time clock. The fire doesn't only need to go between 9 and 5.
That's
you
right.
have to make sure it's going all the time, right? Wood doesn't only get chopped between 9 and 5. You have to make sure you're doing it all the time. The animals don't necessarily need to be fed all the time, but you do have to feed them at certain points.
That's right. Even on your days off. So we'll take a day off, say Saturday, but the animals don't take a day off from eating and pooping in their pens. Morning routine, I'll be the first one usually up in the household, so I have to go at this point in the year, I have to tend to 2 fires. So you got to go and make sure it's stocked up with wood because it's been burning all night, and typically whoever's up last in the evening, they'll stock it up for that overnight burn as well. And if you don't do it, like we found out the other night, if you don't do it the night before, you're going to wake up to a cooler house. And so you could live in the city where you can just flick the switch and pay a bill, or you can do it yourself out here for a lot cheaper, and it keeps you fit. Like you're not gonna be lazy doing this, and you'll feel better about it too.
Or gain any unwanted weight, and and that's the other thing is the mobility aspect of it too. Keeps you functionally fit for sure.
So next question.
Yeah. Okay. So our next question, that is a common question that people ask: is it legal to live off grid? And I know that we have some certain opinions on that. That what I would say for that question, I would say don't ask people permission to live your life. The way that you live your personal life has nothing to do with whether it's legal or not legal in terms of how you choose to live your personal life, particularly if you live off grid and you're not reliant on a system.
Well, that's just it. And I know there's a lot, and again, it relates back to what your off-grid lifestyle is. I know there's a huge trend happening right now with tiny houses, and I know government wants to kind of put a damper on things like that, where you can park it and where you can't park it, which if it's on their property, I can understand. At the same time, why are we always asking for permission from Big Brother when it should be the other way around? I feel that we're always asking for permission to do something in life, even to the fact of living a simple lifestyle. Now you're going to ask. So to keep it short, just do what you want. Don't ask permission. Anybody out there looking or having a tiny house and having difficulty finding a place, hit us up in the comments, and you can park your place over here, no problem, right?
No problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the third question, the last one that we wanted to discuss, is a little bit more in general terms. We may do a specific video later, kind of breaking down some theoretical numbers for you guys. But the third question that we often get asked is, how much does it cost to live off grid? Now that I would say
it's a
depends.
Pretty loaded question.
It's a very loaded question. That I would say is dependent again on what kind of lifestyle you'd like to live and what kind of property you get. Certain considerations have to be taken into, or certain factors have to be taken into consideration when you are thinking about moving off grid. I will say that regardless of what amount of setup you have for an off grid property, your startup costs are going to be fairly large in terms of if you're looking to do homesteading, in terms of looking to do animals, if you're looking to put some solar on there or some sort of electric system, that's going to be something that's expensive. I would say your startup costs when you first start, you got to get supplies, you got to get all set up.
All depends on what country you are into. Here in Canada, depending on what province. When we were looking at properties, we were looking at things in Ontario. they were flying off the market, but at the same time, the same price point that we found out here in British Columbia, we found out there it had more acreage, but the property itself wasn't developed as this one. Where this one here is more acreage, a bigger house, it already has solar on it, it already has the shop and the outbuildings ready for the animals, where the other property I would have had to, or we would have had to invest and put money into it, and that takes time. Also, if you're going to be, depending, again, what your lifestyle is for living off-grid, if you're going to be just living in a tent on a piece of land, now you're going to also have to think about your food storage and how are you going to store your food, because you're not going to most likely have electricity of some sort to plug in a freezer or a fridge. So in the winter it's going to be pretty simple to store food, because outside is your natural freezer and fridge, but what are you going to do come the spring, summer, and fall when you can't do that? So are you going to be digging a hole and burying things in the ground? Are you going to be how are you going to adapt? That's kind of what you're going to think about too. So those startup costs there, or the living costs, are very small, but now you have to adapt to a lot more different strategies. Where if you have something set up, yes, the upfront cost is going to be a lot more, but you're not going to have to deal with those obstacles like you would be in a tent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it depends on what the property is, on how far away it, and the real estate market as well has something to do with that. To actually buy the property, and then if you're looking at putting other buildings on it or putting other things on it that you need for living, again, your version of an off-grid lifestyle, you're going to have to spend money. I'd say in general your startup costs are going to be fairly large, no matter what off-grid property you buy, unless you're buying something that is literally turnkey and walk in, which is very, very rare for an off-grid property.
And also,
everything's all set up
and make sure if you're looking at off-grid properties, what they include, right? Because some people's prices are out to lunch. And a perfect example is the scenario we have here. So our property is 10 acres, 2,500 square foot house, 10 or 11 outbuildings, all that jazz, all fully set up, solar and everything like that. Now you got down the street another property that's only 500 square feet bigger than this house. However, there's no solar, there's no outbuildings, and they're looking for and it's only 5 acres. I'm not sure about their water. They're not spring fed like they are, or like we are here, I believe. I think they're on a well. So now you have another obstacle on that. How are you going to get the water out of the well? And their price point is 3 times as much as this one. And we're literally like 2 kilometers down the road, or 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers down the road. So look around, shop around. Don't think you found something that's a good price, because you never know where something, a gem is hiding too. Yeah. I think
those are the first kind of questions we wanted to address. There's definitely more of these videos coming, because we've got a huge list of questions that people have been asking us throughout the course of this year. So stay tuned, and we will see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching.